Good morning. My name is Robert Shoffner, and I am a past national president of the Urban Financial Services Coalition. Currently, I am Dean of the Business School at Golden Gate University. And this morning, I just want to talk about, in general, some of the things facing the financial services industry, maybe a little bit more pointed towards banks, but really these are things that are going to be facing all businesses. The one thing that everyone in this room should know something about, make it a point to learn something about because it's going to affect your life, is generative AI. If you haven't taken a course on AI, if you haven't done some reading on AI, you are behind. So at Golden Gate, we've already put in place 3 sessions. We're developing courses because this is something you're going to have to know. It will affect your life. It will affect how you do your job. So very, very key. The second thing is around the roles of banking and financial services are rapidly changing. What you used to do, oh, I'm coming in, I'm a personal banker. Or I'm doing something as a commercial banker. Or I've got this role, I've got that role. We can all think of the traditional roles that we've had in banking. Those are changing rapidly. Banks are right now going through a really rapid revolution on how they're training individuals. And part of what that means is that you got to be adaptable, you have to be flexible, because you're going to be asked to do many different things. It's not just one role. I had mentioned earlier that there were 6 or 7 people in a branch, that's down to 4. There's this new role in banking that you'll hear more and more about called the universal banker. The universal banker means that I can come and see you and I've got a small business. You can help me get a small business loan underwritten, you know something about cash management, etc. Then, before I leave, I'm thinking about buying a new house. You switch your hat and you're now starting to tell someone about how to get a mortgage and what to go through on that process. And I'm thinking about getting an auto loan. Now you're putting on your personal banker hat, but you're going to be demanded. New employees are going to have skills and ability to do all those things. Universal banker may morph more into securities, insurance, other things along those lines, except for the fact that they're very specific skills and there's a licensing process and all those things. So that's not where banks are sort of taking it right at the moment. But those other things I talked about, that very much is a part of what banks are focused in on, is this flexibility, adaptability, that you're going to be asked to do more than one job, and you're going to have to understand how AI helps you do your job more efficiently and effectively. So for all of us, that just means lifelong learning. The days of, I went and got my degree, and I got a master's degree, and I'm done, I'm good, I'm ready to go. No, there's something you got to learn probably every single month, certainly every year. So be aware of that. Fraud is another big thing that banks are faced with. Now, banks are they're behind the curve. They really do not know what to do. Fraud is so rapid. Banks used to be pretty secretive. They used to be sort of insular, not really talking much. Now banks regularly are getting together every single week. The big 5 and other banks to have discussions about, what are you saying in fraud? What's going on here? Because it's out of control. And they are not quite sure what to do with that. What does that mean for us and our communities? Is that you may look up, geez, I think I've had a good bank account. I think I've done everything right. And someone says, no, we're closing your account. We saw a check come through. We saw something happen on your account, which was a warning flag for us. And by the way, everything is an algorithm now. So we looked at the algorithm on your account, and you don't really have that much money in the bank anyway. We're closing your account. That's happening as we speak. And it's happening a lot to our minority communities. that type of scenario. So what are the skills that you need? You're certainly, what I said, generative AI, you're going to have to develop some skills in that area. Probably you need to have a little bit of knowledge of sustainability. Certainly if you're in the corporate side of the bank and doing some work there, you need to have some knowledge about that. Project management skills are key. Can you manage a project from beginning to end? Then some key skills: communication, both verbal and written. But Urban Financial Services Coalition, where does that play a role for at least banks is, take advantage of every opportunity when you get to communicate and present. It's a key skill that everybody's looking for you to have. Interpersonal skills are key. Most institutions, not just banking, not just financial services, they are just stunned by how little interpersonal skills young people have. They don't know how to interact. They don't do networking anymore. They don't do some of the things where they would learn that. They're very comfortable in looking at their phone, in texting. Literally, they won't get up out of their desk and walk 2 cubicles over to talk to somebody. They'll text them. That has implications, because how do you face off against a customer? How do you face off against others? Business analytics. It's a really key field, and you need to know something about business analytics and how you use data to create a competitive advantage for either for your own individual business that you're doing, or for your unit, or for the institution. So learning something about business analytics, learning something about cybersecurity. Now those 2 areas that I just spoke about, cybersecurity, business analytics, those are where there's going to be some jobs in the future. So if you're talking to someone, meet me, well, I want to go and be a personal banker, I can get you some training on that, do that, but that may not be where the jobs are going to be. They may be in other areas of the bank. Banks may start to look a little bit more like tech firms than what we've seen in the past. Big banking issues are distribution is changing rapidly. You see it all the time. There is consolidation. And the number of branches we have today will be far less by next year, will be far less than next year. Because banks have learned the pandemic fast forwarded this initiative and has taught banks we have to really come up with a remote distribution presentation method. So you have to be really, really comfortable with understanding how to use Zoom, understanding how to use multiple platforms, and how you interact with customers. So technology is key. Digital lending, that's where lending is going, more so than you're sitting down at someone's desk. This automated, personalized customer experience, get good at that. Now, why do I say get good at that? Because my own personal experience, victim of fraud on my account, went to the bank, and I tell you, I hope it doesn't ever happen to you, but that is a frustrating experience. Have to deal with people over the phone. And if the system's not up to par, I mean, you would literally, well, all right, now they've tried 10 different ways not to have me speak to somebody on my money. So it's those type of things that is a skill that banks are trying to really figure out. And how do they deliver to the consumer? Blockchain and decentralized solutions are going to be replacing banks. So that's something that's coming down the pikes. The role of banks is going to change. And banks have to be adaptable and think about how they're going to meet the demands of their customers. Mid-market banks are in danger of disappearing. And part of that was from what happened with First Republic and what happened with Silicon Valley Bank. So now you sit at Silicon Valley Bank, oh, they're the smart bank in town, da 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 da. How do you have this bank, this huge bank, and they don't have a chief risk officer? They don't have a CRO. They didn't. Part of the reason why they went under so quickly. I don't know how the Fed, I don't know how the regulators let that get by, that they didn't have a CRO, but they didn't. And then you go over to First Republic Bank, another smart bank, they got all this money rolling in and whatever, and somehow the chairman thought that he was going to somehow beat the market forces and whatever, and didn't need to cover off the risk exposure, that he's got all this money in a fixed portfolio and it's going south on him. They didn't feel they needed really to do anything. Bank went out of existence. They staved off the crisis for, what, a couple weeks? They went out of business. Well, now the Fed is now looking more and more at smaller banks, really scrutinizing, really wondering about capital levels. So large banks, hey, you need to have this much more. Those banks, easier for them to do sometimes than for a smaller institution, a mid-sized institution even. Banks are still targeting LMI, low to moderate income. It's still a market underserved. How it is served is the $1,000 question. What are we going to do that? Because they're still woefully behind in adequately serving that market. What it means for us as a minority bank trade association is there's opportunity there if we can figure out ways to partner with them and help them address those markets in a more efficient and effective manner. So there's a market opportunity there. We need to think about that. Small business is still a key for banks. And around small business, it's how can we deliver effectively? I don't want to have you go and sit next to you and have to go through a whole interview and write something out on paper and do all these things. That's very expensive. So we're trying to think, the banks are trying to think about how do they do this in big numbers. And I spoke about technology is key. Technology is rapidly changing. The things that you even saw 2 years ago will change sometime this year. I don't know if you guys keep track of the CES show that was in Las Vegas. It's always the first or second week in January in Vegas where all the new stuff is presented for tech. Every single thing that was presented is AI. There's an AI component to it. So that's where I started. That's sort of where I'll end on some trends that I see in banking. And then I'll just talk about a few other things that I think are important for us.